So pleased to reintroduce to you the incredible Dean Koontz. His latest novel is called What the Night Knows. He is, of course, a New York Times #1 best-selling author. He's written so many books. I would say he's a master of the psychological thriller. And unfortunately, his latest book seems to be prescient in a way that I would not have expected. Welcome, Dean Koontz, to the Lisa Wexler Show today.
Well, thanks for having me there again.
So, What the Night Knows opens with a story, and of course, because it is a thriller, we don't want to give too much away. But one cannot help be, especially since I picked it up this week, one cannot help be struck by the opening couple of chapters, which tell a story very similar to the news headlines today.
Well, it's to give a little background, the lead character is John Calvino. He's a homicide detective, and when he was 14 years old, a killer killed his parents and his sisters, and John that very night killed the killer, and his was the fourth family that was targeted. And now it's 20 years later. John is a homicide detective. He has a wife and 3 children of his own, and somebody is committing those crimes all over again like a copycat. But John comes to the conclusion fairly swiftly, it isn't a copycat. It is the spirit of man he killed, Alton Turner Blackwood, back in the world somehow. And John's a man of reason and logic and facts, and this is a difficult thing to get his hands around. And now, I think what you're referring to in the opening is this young man who's capable of hideous violence, and I write about the real world. I write about what's out there, and that the world is a place of shades of gray. Yes, there's some truth in that, but the world is also a place of stark good and stark evil. And sometimes in the modern world, we don't like to face that. And in fact, it's true, and the news will from time to time remind us of it.
So this week's incident is Jared Laughlin, and he's a young man who looks like he went off the track around the age of 15, from what we can surmise, which is just bits and pieces of third-hand news. And it looks like he descended into some kind of either the evil place or the mad place or the mentally ill place, but someplace way, way off where people are supposed to be. And when I opened your book and I started to read, and of course you write so beautifully, and you write in shorthand script in a way that the reader can get a very distilled, quick, concise image in not a lot of words, which incidentally is the kind of writing that I most like to read. But basically, you portray a young adolescent male, somewhere in that period, adolescent, young 20s, capable of the smirk, the cold-heartedness. We're reading about Jared Laughlin every day continuing to smirk in prison. I don't know. It was a strange thing to open up your book and to see that opening chapter like that. How many of these characters are out there, or how many of them have you personally met yourself?
Well, it's daunting to know that when you do this for a living, that you can't create anything more frightening than what the real world will show you within a week of your having written it. And it's something of which I've always been aware. And the key thing for me as a writer is never to glamorize that, never to glamorize evil, never to make it appealing, to really show the horror of it, but more than the horror, to show the tragedy of evil in this world. And so I've always been interested in it. Aberrant psychology has long interested me. I've read a lot of it, about it, and it's possible that this young man had a case of paranoid schizophrenia. There are drugs to treat most forms of schizophrenia, most manifestations of it, and it's a tragedy that nobody took him in hand and gave that opportunity to have this managed. Instead, it just went sliding down and down. If it isn't a form of schizophrenia, then I also believe in the ability of the wrong impressions to change a long way, and we see that he had something like a satanic altar. He had
right.
He loves certain kinds of heavy metal music that deals in that sort of thing, and you have to wonder, these things can have an impact.
Well, you always wonder about, are people attracted to that because it's already within them, or does the fact that they may have sort of a superficial attraction but then get deeper into it make it even more worse, even exacerbate what might have been just a dalliance at the beginning? I don't think there's any question that the violence we see around us in the media, I'm not talking really about picking up a book because that's a very different experience. I'm talking about the sensate exposure that we have via computer, via television, via movies. I don't think there's any question that that's deadened and desensitized an entire swath of people in our country, on the earth. I don't really see that you could have any other conclusion.
I would pretty much agree. It's why when I write a novel, I don't write blood and gore. I just don't want to engage in that. You can with a couple of sentences, you can let the reader know what happened and let them know about it in a moody and effective way without dwelling upon it. And it's more the effect of this on lives that's the powerful thing in fiction that deals with this, not the act itself, but how it transforms the lives of other people and the tragedy of it that can move you. And yeah, I've seen how involvement in something that seems a relatively innocent pursuit initially, if the wrong psychology is at work in the person, then it becomes an obsession. And anything that becomes an obsession can be a source of danger and mental disruption. I'm
chatting with Dean Koontz. You're listening to the Lisa Wexler Show, his latest, and I'm sure it's going to open as yet another #1 New York Times bestseller, is called What the Night Knows. Dean Koontz, I wanted to ask you, in your own background, did you, as a professional, before you became a writer, come in professional contact with a lot of criminals?
Not some. I have quite a few friends who are police officers. That I've gravitated to because I'm fascinated with their work and I write about it. And criminals, not too much, except my first job in the poverty program was tutoring children from poor families who supposedly had the intellectual capacity or the talent or whatever to succeed in language or with language if they were given close personal instruction. But what in fact happened was the teachers just got rid of their worst discipline problems. And so a lot of those kids that came to me had problems with the law, had reform school records, and I got a first-hand look at kids who were going off the rails. But one of the most impressive things to me was how many of those kids wanted to be on the right track. It was almost in every instance a parenting failure. Their parents didn't care. Their parents were in themselves on drugs or this or that, and the kids were lost. But when they believed you cared about them and when they believed you wanted them to succeed, it was amazing how they could sometimes, very often, step up to the plate and improve themselves. So
that once again tells you that being cared for, early intervention, just a connection with a person really can make all the difference in the world. We see it again and again. We talk about it again and again. One of the things that I've been talking about a little bit on the radio, a little bit, Dean Koontz, and I'm curious to know your personal opinion about this. I interviewed yesterday Bonnie Fuller, who is Hollywood Life and Hollywood Baby and former editor of Us magazine. And one of the reasons she came on, we were talking about all the pregnant stars in Hollywood, and I couldn't help but notice that virtually none of them are married and really couldn't care less. And I do believe that we don't talk enough about the importance of two parents raising children.
It's important. I mean, when that was the first job I had, I saw it over and over again, where there was one parent struggling to do well maybe by the kid, or there were two parents, but one of them wasn't really parenting because of their problems, and you could just see what a difference it made in the lives of these kids. And it's a great national tragedy. I would agree with you on.
Thank you very much. Your book is What the Night Knows. It's a fantastic thriller, psychological, moody, brilliant writing. We wish you great luck and success on this next great book. Thank you very much, Dean Koontz, for being on the Lisa Wexler Show.
It's always fun being there. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.